Hello everyone and welcome back to my new video. One of the biggest stories of last week's NBA trade deadline was the Los Angeles Lakers' lack of activity. They made exactly 0 trades, with the team struggling big time leading up to the annual event. More than anything, most figured that Los Angeles couldn't pull off a trade because it had very little assets in terms of both young players and draft picks. Surprisingly, that might not be the case. NBA insider Ramona Shelburne of ESPN appeared on Brian Windhorst's The Hoop Collective podcast recently to break it down. What she had to say was rather interesting. It had to do with LeBron James and the Lakers' core group of future Hall of Famers pushing for the team that Los Angeles currently has assembled and how they weren't going to be bailed out. The Los Angeles Lakers were not in a great place ahead of the NBA trade deadline on Thursday. They had disgruntled stars, a losing record, and a general air of dysfunction a couple of months before the playoffs were scheduled to start. The bad news: nothing changed once the trade deadline passed. Same disgruntled stars, same losing record, same general air of dysfunction, as some stiff winds of change swept through the NBA on Thursday. The Lakers continued hobbling forward as constructed, which does not bode well for their future. It is an indictment of a franchise that still employs LeBron James and Anthony Davis, two stars who are part of a hodgepodge cast of aging and ill-fitting pieces. Exhibit A: Russell Westbrook, whose inconsistent play at age 33 has landed him on the bench in crunch time situation if the Lakers were looking to trade him this week. There was an obvious problem: who would take him and his contract? He is making $44 million this season, with a player option worth $47 million next season. In a post-deadline conference call with the team's beat writers, Lakers general manager Rob Pelinka did not offer specific details but said he was aggressive in a lot of conversations trying to improve this team. Nothing panned out. As for Westbrook's future, Russ is a big-hearted individual. He wants to win, Pelinka said, and he knows that with players as impactful and influential as Anthony and LeBron are, it's going to require sacrifices in his game and how he plays. On Wednesday night, Westbrook sat out the Lakers' loss to the Portland Trail Blazers with what the team described as a stiff back. Afterward, Lakers coach Frank Vogel said Westbrook had been engaged with his teammates on the bench. That might have been the only bright spot for the Lakers, who are 26-30 ahead of their game against Golden State on Saturday. "I do know this has been an extremely difficult and challenging season for all of us," Vogel said. "So there is a toll." Those words preceded a dizzying trade deadline for a whole bunch of teams not named the Lakers. At the top of that list, the Nets agreed to send James Harden to the 76ers as part of a deal for Ben Simmons, Seth Curry, and Andre Drummond. Other big names were on the move, including Kristaps Porzingis, whom the Dallas Mavericks traded to the Washington Wizards for Spencer Dinwiddie. The Boston Celtics beefed up their backcourt by trading for Derek White. The Charlotte Hornets acquired Montrezl Harrell from Washington for a late-season push, while the Lakers could still be active in the buyout market. It seems impossible to envision a way in which they could reinvent themselves as a realistic championship contender. They were limited at the trade deadline after having already sacrificed so many assets, including future draft picks, in their deals for Davis and Westbrook. On Wednesday night, the eve of the trade deadline, James said he was tired. "I just want to get some wine and get up tomorrow," said James, who helped deliver a championship to the Lakers just 2 seasons ago. "I feel good about what tomorrow has in store, and we'll see what happens," he added. "But other than that, I'm kind of just focused on what we can do to be better." It is a long list. Entering Thursday, the Lakers ranked 17th in defensive rating, 22nd in offensive rating, and 26th in turnovers. Westbrook has committed 224 turnovers this season, more than any other player in the league. It was only August when the Lakers acquired him from the Wizards in exchange for Kyle Kuzma, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Harrell, and draft picks. While James seemed to acknowledge his role in recruiting Westbrook to the Lakers, it was exciting helping put this team together this summer, James said before the start of the season. Westbrook seemed thrilled about returning to Los Angeles, where he grew up and played in college at UCLA. He went so far as to call it a blessing. It was not difficult, though, to anticipate problems before the experiment began. The Lakers, with the oldest roster in the league, were built to compete for championships 8 years ago. In fairness, James said it would be a process to form chemistry, but a process usually leads to some form of improvement. And the Lakers, if anything, have regressed recently, having lost 6 of their last 8 games. James and Davis have been limited because of knee injuries. Davis missed a huge chunk of the season, and there are broader concerns about the state of James's 37-year-old body. but Westbrook is a shadow of the player who won the NBA's Most Valuable Award with the Oklahoma City Thunder in 2017. In 55 games with the Lakers, Westbrook is averaging 18.3 points per game, the fewest he has averaged since his second season in the league in 2009-10, while shooting 43.5% from the field and just 29.8% from three-point range. At the same time, he has started to gripe about his diminished role. "You never know when you're coming in. You never know when you're coming out," he said this week. On Wednesday, James compared the trade deadline to being in a fog. "We're all trying to see what's on the other side of it," he said. On Thursday, the fog dissipated. The view was unpleasant. On Thursday, "We asked you which Eastern Conference team will make the NBA Finals this season. At the moment, no team in that poll has more than 24% of the vote. And 5 clubs have at least an 11% vote share, while the East has been the conference of parity this season. The Western Conference has been something quite different. 2 teams, the Suns and Warriors, have controlled the top of the standings for essentially the entire season. No other club has cracked the top 2 since November 10. Teams that have a ton of regular season success but haven't yet proven themselves in the playoffs are often regarded with skepticism. Not considered true contenders until they make a deep postseason run. But Westbrook is a shadow of the player who won the NBA's Most Valuable Award with the Oklahoma City Thunder in 2017. In 55 games with the Lakers, Westbrook is averaging 18.3 points per game, the fewest he has averaged since his second season in the league in 2009-10, while shooting 43.5% from the field and just 29.8% from three-point range. At the same time, he has started to gripe about his diminished role. "You never know when you're coming in. You never know when you're coming out," he said this week. On Wednesday, James compared the trade deadline to being in a fog. "We're all trying to see what's on the other side of it," he said. On Thursday, the fog dissipated. The view was unpleasant. On Thursday, "We asked you which Eastern Conference team will make the NBA Finals this season. At the moment, no team in that poll has more than 24% of the vote. And 5 clubs have at least an 11% vote share, while the East has been the conference of parity this season. The Western Conference has been something quite different. 2 teams, the Suns and Warriors, have controlled the top of the standings for essentially the entire season. No other club has cracked the top 2 since November 10th. Teams that have a ton of regular season success but haven't yet proven themselves in the playoffs are often regarded with skepticism. Not considered true contenders until they make a deep postseason run. But Golden State's current core, led by Stephen Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green, has a long history of playoff success. And while Phoenix certainly can't match the Warriors' recent track record, the Suns showed last spring that they were no fluke, making it all the way to the NBA Finals and coming within 2 wins of a title. In other words, these 2 teams are legit and look like the odds-on favorites to meet in the Western Conference Finals. But that's obviously not a foregone conclusion yet. With a handful of intriguing clubs filling out the playoff picture, the Grizzlies, for one, are putting pressure on Golden State for the number 2 seed in the conference. Their 41-19 record puts them just a game and a half back of the Dubs. Memphis is one of those teams we alluded to above, whose lack of recent playoff success means they'll have plenty of skeptics to win over. But Ja Morant, Jaren Jackson, and company have shown they're not willing to back down from anybody and have made the Grizzlies one of the NBA's most exciting teams. The Jazz have championships aspirations and look great when they're firing on all cylinders. But they've been up and down this season and have been exposed at times by smaller lineups. The Mavericks are hoping that this year's supporting cast is a better fit for Luka Doncic, but they'll still only go as far as their all-NBA guard takes them. The Nuggets are one of the Western Conference's most interesting contenders. Nikola Jokic has kept them firmly in the playoff mix with another MVP-caliber performance, and he could get some help before the end of the season if Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. return for the playoffs and look anything like their 2020-21 selves. Denver will be an extremely tough out. Like Denver, the Clippers and Lakers could be dangerous if they're at full strength, but Kawhi Leonard seems like a long shot to make it back this spring for the Clips, and the Lakers haven't been able to put it all together even when their stars are healthy. The Timberwolves currently hold the top play-in spot ahead of the 2 Los Angeles teams and are looking to clinch a playoff spot for just the second time since 2004. It's too early to rule anything out, but a deep postseason run seems unlikely for a Minnesota team that would have been happy entering the season just to earn a playoff berth. If the 9 teams we've already mentioned finish in the top 10, That leaves one play-in spot for a group that includes the revamped Pelicans and Kings, the surprisingly surging Trail Blazers, and Greg Popovich's young Spurs. Again, never say never. But it's a pretty safe bet that none of these teams will be representing the West in the finals this June. This is all for today, folks. If you enjoyed this video, then leave a like, and if you are new, then don't forget to subscribe. Stay tuned for the future updates. See you till the next video. Thank you for watching.